It is the most powerful and the most misunderstood force on the planet. It is an invisible architecture, an intricate system of pipes and valves that surrounds every one of us, channeling power, wealth, and human effort in directions we are never meant to see. We are born into this system. We live our entire lives inside its walls, and most will die without ever questioning its design. It is not a law of physics. It is not a natural order. It is an invention, a design. We call it debt. To the average person, debt is a simple tool, a loan for a house, a line of credit for a car, a way to fund a business. This is a dangerous, carefully crafted misunderstanding. The modern global economy is not simply in debt. The system is debt. It is the operating system. It is the air we breathe. And when you hear the familiar narrative that the global economy is breaking, that the system is failing or cracking under the strain, you are being told a sophisticated and convenient lie. The system is not failing. It is not an accident. It is working. It is functioning precisely as it was designed. The periodic crashes, the defaults, the devastating recessions. These are not bugs. They are features. The question is not if this architecture will collapse. The mathematics guarantee it. The real, terrifying question is why it was built to collapse from the very beginning. This is the story of the debt architecture, and it is a warning that history has tried to give us, time and time again. The architecture was not built in a day. Its foundations are ancient, but its modern blueprints were drafted in secrecy, centuries ago. Forget the simplified textbook stories of barter. Forget the simple invention of coins. The true architecture began with a simple, corrupting idea separating the symbol of money from the value of money. Our first exhibit is 17th century Sweden. The nation is a great European power, but its treasury is empty. They are rich in copper, but the metal itself is impractical. They use massive copper plates, plot mint, weighing up to 44 pounds, just for simple transactions. A banker named Johann Palmstruck sees an opportunity. He proposes a solution. He founds the Stockholms Banco and creates kreditivsedlar, paper, the first official banknotes in Europe. He makes a solemn promise every piece of paper is backed, 1-to-1, by the heavy copper plates sitting securely in his vault. It is revolutionary. Trade explodes, the paper is light, convenient, and trusted, but the temptation, the core design flaw, is too great. Palmstruck, under pressure to fund wars and royal projects, issues more paper, then more paper, and more. He begins lending paper notes that are not backed by copper in the vault. It is the birth of fractional reserve banking. The first credit bubble inflates. The price of assets soars. And then, the inevitable. The public realizes the fraud. A panic ensues. A run on the bank. The system collapses. Palmstruck is disgraced, arrested, and sentenced to death for his fraud. But the blueprint, the glitch, was now visible to the architects. The genie was out of the bottle, so this glitch was not destroyed. It was studied. It was refined. Fast forward to 1910, the United States. The nation is wary of centralized banking. It is a nation built on distrust of concentrated power. But after a series of carefully manufactured banking panics, a cabal of the world's most powerful men meets in total, absolute secrecy. They travel in a sealed, private railway car to a remote location, Jekyll Island, Georgia. They represent the empires of Rockefeller, Morgan, and Warburg, They account for perhaps 1/4 of the entire world's wealth. For 9 days, they hammer out the details of a new system. Their creation is sold to the public 3 years later as a safety measure, a Federal Reserve. It is marketed as a way to prevent panics and stabilize the currency. But its true purpose is the opposite. It is the legal centralization of the Palmstruck glitch. It gives a small, private group the legal monopoly to do what Palmstruck was executed for: creating money from nothing, lending it to the government, and charging interest on it. The architecture was now in place. It had captured the most powerful nation on Earth. But the machine needed one final component to achieve global scale. It needed to be connected to the world's gold. And then, it needed to sever that connection. 1944. Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The world is shattered by war. Nations seek stability. The United States, as the last industrial power standing and holding 2/3 of the world's gold, makes the offer. The United States dollar, backed by gold at $35 an ounce, will be the world's reserve currency. It is a promise. As good as gold. Other nations peg their currencies to the dollar. The global system is born. For a few decades, it holds a golden age of prosperity. But the design, the glitch, is always waiting. The 1960s, the United States government, funding an unwinnable war in Vietnam and massive social programs at home, does what architects always do. It prints far, far more dollars than it has gold to back. Other nations, led by a skeptical Charles de Gaulle of France, are not stupid. They see the debasement. They begin to call the bluff. France, famously, began demanding physical gold in exchange for its dollars as early as 1960, challenging the core of the agreement. The vault is emptying. The system is breaking. And then, the activation. August 15th, 1971, a date that should be taught in every school. President Richard Nixon looks into a television camera and delivers a temporary message. He severs the last thread, the final anchor connecting the symbol to reality. Gone. From that moment on, all money, all of it, became fiat, a Latin word for "let it be done." Money by decree. It is brought into existence only when someone, somewhere, takes out a loan. For the system to grow, the world must take on more debt. For the system to even survive, it must expand. Forever. A finite planet was just irrevocably harnessed to an equation that demands infinite growth. The clock on a controlled, global default was now ticking. This is not a new story. This architecture has been built before, using simpler tools. Look at the Roman Empire, the denarius coin, once a symbol of Roman power, nearly pure silver, a reliable store of value for generations. But the empire grew too large. Its legions became too expensive. Its bread and circuses became unsustainable. The emperors could not raise taxes any further. The people would revolt. So they chose a different, quieter path. They began to clip the coins, to shave off the silver from the edges. Then they began the process of debasement. They mixed the silver with worthless base metals. Under Nero, the denarius was 90% silver. By the time of Gallienus, it was less than 5%. A copper coin with a thin, deceptive silver wash. The symbol remained, but the value was gone. The people knew. Gresham's law took effect. They hoarded the old, pure coins. They spent the new, worthless ones as fast as possible. This inflation, this monetary debasement, it was not an accident. It was a policy. It was a deliberate, slow-motion default on the empire's obligations. It destroyed the savings of the middle class. It hollowed out the economy by you. It shattered social trust. It led, inevitably, to collapse. Now, look at the French Revolution. The revolutionaries seized the lands of the church, a vast, tangible asset. To fund their new government, they issued paper notes called Assignats. The promise was identical to Johann Palmstrucke's. Each note was a mortgage on this valuable land. It was asset-backed, but the temptation was too great. They printed more to pay soldiers, more to buy grain, more. Within years, the assignats were worthless. A wheelbarrow full of paper notes could not buy a loaf of bread. Hyperinflation destroyed the revolutionary dream long before Napoleon took power. Now, look at today. We do not clip coins. We do not need to. Our tools are far more elegant, more abstract, more powerful. We call it quantitative easing, a sophisticated name for when a central bank prints trillions of digital dollars to buy bonds. We call it zero interest rate policy. These are just academic names for the same ancient debasement. It is a hidden tax. It is a slow, invisible default on the system's promises. The Roman citizen watched their silver coin turn to copper. The French citizen watched their assignat become kindling. We watch our bank accounts grow, yet our ability to buy a house, to fund retirement, to live, evaporates. The architecture is identical. The only difference is the speed of transmission and the complexity of the camouflage. Here is the secret you are not meant to know. The default beside the collapse, the Great Reset. This is not the enemy of the system. It is the goal. It is the intended function. A system based on infinitely compounding debt, a system where money is debt, has only two sustainable mathematical outcomes. It is a simple, binary choice. Outcome 1, hyperinflation, the Weimar model. The currency evaporates. Outcome 2, deflation, the Depression model. The assets are seized. In both scenarios, the debt is resolved. In both scenarios, a massive, generational, and brutal transfer of real wealth occurs. The system does not die. It simply sheds its skin. It resets. And the architects who control the creation of the debt, who sit at the very center of the architecture, are waiting. They are waiting to buy the wreckage for pennies on the dollar, using new money they create out of thin air. This is the mathematical endgame, the true Great Reset. The term you now hear being marketed by those very same architects, that is simply the branding for the next phase of the architecture. The system is designed to build pressure until it explodes, allowing the architects to consolidate control. The panics, the crashes, the wars, these are not bugs. They are features. They are the mechanisms of control. They create the crisis so they can sell you the solution. And the solution, as we are already being told, is always more centralization, more control, a new, safer system. Perhaps a central bank digital currency, a system where every transaction is monitored, tracked, and approved. A system where money can be programmed with an expiration date, or restricted from being spent on things the architects do not approve of. The perfect prison, yeah. So, we are living inside an architecture designed to default. We are passengers on a train engineered to crash. What does this analysis mean for us? This is not financial advice. This is not pessimism. It is a warning based on the repeating, brutal precedents of history. The first step to survival is understanding the architecture. You must see the walls of the prison before you can even look for an exit. The architects rely on our ignorance. They rely on our belief that the system is stable, that the crashes are accidents, and that they are the ones who can fix it. Historically, In every single debasement, in every systemic default, survival meant one thing: exiting the system that was designed to fail. It meant trading the symbols of wealth for real wealth, things that cannot be printed by a central bank, things that cannot be debased by a corrupt emperor, things that do not have a counterparty risk, that do not rely on someone else's promise to be valuable. Things that exist outside the architecture of debt. The Romans hoarded pure silver coins. The citizens of Weimar Germany bought pianos, art, factories, and productive land. When the music stopped, they were holding the real assets, while those holding paper marks were left with nothing. The architecture is a machine designed to capture, channel, and ultimately confiscate real value. Your strategy, therefore, must be to hold value where the architects cannot easily reach it, to reduce your dependence on the very system that sees your savings as fuel for its own survival, to build resilience, to acquire skills, to own tangible things. The default is coming. It is no longer a matter of if, it is only a matter of when. It is not a random, unfortunate event. It is not a glitch. It is the feature